morning, good people. Another week, another chance to hustle. We're at Park Inn by Radisson, and today's show is all about careers. Because growing up, that's the one thing we used to hear a lot, right? What do you want to be when you grow up? And whereas the options felt like they were limited to 2-3 things, in this day and age, it's really like up to you to just decide what you want to be. You can be anything, you can be anyone. And so we wanted to highlight 3 careers that are not really known but are really interesting. We've got an aeronautical engineer, a barista, and an actuary. So let's dive into today's conversation. So my very first guest is Jay Koskei, and he's the head of actuarial at Britam. He's an actuary, and we're going to dive deep into his world to try and understand it. Welcome to the show, Jay.
Thank you, Sha.
I feel like you're very serious. Is your work also very serious?
It's a bit serious, but yeah.
Not just a bit. It's like a lot of numbers, right?
Yeah.
A lot of numbers. So why don't you break it down? If you were to explain to a 3-year-old what you do for a living, what would you say?
Yeah, that's definitely a hard question considering what I do. So actuarial science, which is the profession that I'm in, looks at the quantification of risk, especially...
Okay, so literally, I'm literally going to ask, imagine I'm a 3-year-old. So quantification of risk already is like, what is quantificate of risk? What are we...
So we try to look into the future.
Okay.
We try to look into the future.
Yeah.
Sort of looking at sort of future events.
Okay.
And we try to predict that. We do that on the basis of our past knowledge of based on what has happened in the past. So from a simplistic perspective, that's what we do.
Wow. Yeah. Already, if I was a 3-year-old, I'd think you're a superhero. If you're trying to map out what the future looks like. But as an adult, I can imagine how much time and numbers and like calculations go into trying to create this future perspective. So what does your day-to-day actually look like?
Essentially, as within the actual profession, we work a lot with the financial services industry. Okay. And essentially looking at sort of future financial events. So just to bring it closer home is, I would give the example of insurance. Okay. You have your life insurance, which you take out, as a person, you take out life insurance, which will pay out at some point in the future. That future, we don't know when that will be. So as an actuary, I will come in and look at, for example, your mortality, when you'll expect to live, for example, and try to, based on that probability, and we work with probabilities a lot. So because it's a game of chance. It's about chance. So we look at, work with a lot of statistics, sort of try to estimate when, on average, that will be, and how much we'll need to pay you, so that we can use that, for example, to come back and quantify, for example, that premium that we need to pay every month for you to get that life insurance policy.
So do you take it as a per person case, or do you look at generally in this side of the world, or in this part of the world, people live up to X years, therefore, this is what the premium should be?
Definitely. So we do that generally. We use it based on the general population, yes.
Interesting. Okay, so take me through your day-to-day. Does that mean that you have to, is history a big part of what you do?
Yes. We work a lot with data. Okay. We work a lot with data, by its very nature, being an actuary means as I mentioned, we predominantly work within the insurance space. Okay. So it's more or less working a lot with aspects of life insurance, general insurance. So we look at a lot, for example, the life insurance space, we look at mortality. Mortality is essentially
lifespan.
Lifespan, and on the basis of that, mortality for the general population, and we try to segment this into sort of based on ages or based on groups, people who smoke, people who do not, because basically factors that contribute to the lifespan of a person. On the general insurance space, we work with, for example, the most typical, of course, example is car insurance. Okay. For a person who wants to take out car insurance, we have to offer them a premium. To come up with that premium, we have to estimate how much that will be, and it will be based on an accident that will probably occur in the future that we don't know of at this point. So it's based on what is the chance that accident is going to occur, when will it occur, and how much will you expect to pay out or part of that?
Wow.
So in a nutshell, that's what we do.
Right, right. So what did you have to study in school in order to be where you are right now?
Personally, I studied actuarial sciences as in my undergraduate studies as a course. Although really to be an actuary, you don't really need to study actuarial science. For example, I have colleagues who are engineers by profession, who are statisticians by profession. So as long as you're good in math.
So math is a big part of this.
Yes, and you really have a good understanding of the general business environment, because what actuarial science essentially does is it allows you to sort of merge your math sort of skills with what is going on within the environment to really solve problems for the industry.
And dealing mostly with insurance companies?
Mostly with insurance, although we have actuaries working within the banking space. Essentially any area that sort of involves a bit of risk, that involves looking into the future. We have actuaries who have moved on into sort of looking at capital projects. So capital projects are sort of these large-scale infrastructure projects that will take a while to sort of design and implement, and requires someone with sort of similar skills to sort of try and quantify the financial impacts of those projects.
So what is the most fun part of your job?
Actual work is perceived as boring, really, because it entails, the perception is it entails people sitting behind a desk, behind a screen, and crunching numbers and all that. But most of what I do right now entails, dealing with a lot of sort of stakeholders and communicating with them. So it's a lot less about, because what we do tends to be a lot complex, and we need to sort of communicate this to people that we work with, our stakeholders, and as such, there's a lot of communication, sort of professional skills that are involved in sort of communicating this, so that at the end of the day it adds value to the people that you work with.
So it's would you say the interactions that you have is the most fun part?
Yes, like for
the
me,
most interesting?
Being able to interact, being approached with people to solve various problems that they may have that will involve my skills, that's really the fun part of what I do.
I mean, so I don't really enjoy math, but the way you've explained it, it does sound like a very intriguing space. You're trying to like make these calculations, predict the future, and it's down to like a science, and everything has to be so precise. To me, that sounds interesting. It's the math part that has me a little lost there. What is the most challenging part of your job?
Picking up on what you've mentioned around trying to be exact, actually we try to be the opposite, because if you pick 2-3 actuaries and give them the same problem to solve, they will give you the same solution.
What?
Really? Yes.
So, but then, how?
So a lot of it really comes to really judgment and how you
perceive the world.
How you perceive the world, because also there are a lot of assumptions involved. So really, it's not really sort of like an exact science. Okay,
so I'm so curious now to try and understand. So can you give me like an example of such a problem and how assumptions come into play?
And as I said earlier, we cannot predict nobody can predict the future. We try to. We try to, based on a lot of assumptions. Based on a lot of
maybe history, like you were saying as well.
Based on a lot of history and applying assumptions and looking at what will occur in future. For example, issues around inflation, how much will, in the event of an accident, how much will the repair of the vehicle cost? So that's really where we really come from.
So if we're talking about car insurance, some of the things that I would think about is infrastructure. How do the roads actually look? Is it very well developed? What is like the drinking culture? Are we into drinking and driving a lot? Are we more prone to have accidents? What's the general age? Do we have younger kids coming in? Older? So if we were both doing this, and I came up with the figure of the premium should be, say, I'm just going to throw out a number, 5,000 shillings, but you came up and you said 50. How do you then resolve that?
That's indeed a very good question, because at the end of the day, it involves a lot of assumptions, really, based on what you've learned from the past. And that's where, so actuaries never come to the exact conclusion, like the premium will be 5,000 shillings or 50,000 shillings. But in terms of looking into the approach that I've taken, the data that I've considered, the factors that I feel is important, for example, when it comes to driving and vehicles, where you drive. Probably your gender.
Oh.
Probably,
Interesting.
For example,
Yeah,
women are perceived to
interesting.
be better drivers than men. So
Even though that's not what they say when you're
that's not
driving,
exactly the
but
case,
I
yeah.
agree with
Yeah,
that
yeah,
theory.
yeah.
So it's almost very individual based, and but still taking into consideration previous events, and I guess you would probably have a general consensus of what the demographic is. What's the most fulfilling part of your job?
I think based on my experience of working as an actuary, especially within an emerging economy or sort of a growing country, is to make a difference to people that you work with, especially within the insurance space in Kenya. The people with insurance are very few, and coming up with products, for example, that meet the needs of the people that you work with, especially people who have never had insurance, for example, before, it's really fulfilling, and seeing them benefit out of those products, while at the same time ensuring that these products also offer a sustainable manner.
Right.
Yeah.
So would you say that, having studied actuarial science and anticipated what this working environment would be like, would you say that being an actuary actually met your expectations of what it would be?
I would say for me it was. For a lot of people who start to study actuarial science, they may not have that view in mind. Some of the people feel, it pays a lot of money. That's the perception, and that has led to a lot of sort of actuarial students joining this profession.
So would you actually say that this is a lucrative space for people to jump into?
I would say it does pay better than most of the other professions that we have. Also, being the fact that you work within the financial sort of space, financial services space.
Right. So what would you say to someone who's thinking of joining this world of actuarial science? What tip would you have for them?
If you're a person intrigued about solving problems, and you're good with numbers, I would say good in math, and looking at solving problems, because as I mentioned, actuarial science is not about just solving financial problems. It's also about solving other problems, especially problems that are based on events or aspects that are not certain in nature. I would really advocate this profession.
Okay, interesting. Well, thank you so much, Jay. You literally have helped me understand a world that I used to think was just like, boring numbers, but it actually does sound exciting. I think if I was good at numbers, I'd probably give it a go, because it's also problem solving, and I think that's fun. That sounds fun to me. Thanks, Jay. We have a couple more guests lined up for you, so do not go anywhere. We'll be back in a moment.